Mondays. So wanted to say welcome everyone. I'm Deborah Gardner, your host for Hospitality Today Live. And we are just so excited to be here with you. And I'm hoping you're excited to be with us as well, because this is where real life topics, perspectives, opinions, stories, and lessons come alive right here and are shared from amazing guests that we have that work in the hospitality profession. And today we are going to finish out the year on a high note with Don Rasmussen, who happens to be the president of Pathfinder Writing and Career Services. Don will be helping you and I on the right path for more success. And here's the thing that I want to give you heads up about with Don. She is no fluff. She will tell you like it is on how to make a career shift, key things to know about your resume, how to optimize your LinkedIn profile. And so stay with us as Don will give you and me a kick in the pants to move into the new year successfully. Welcome back again to Hospitality Today Live. And now what I'd like to do is welcome my wonderful guest, Don. Hi, Don.
How you doing, Deborah?
I'm doing great. I tell you what, this is the time to have you on this show because it's time to refocus, redefine and even relook, especially at our resumes. So I'm so excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to help share some great ideas and tips for everyone.
Absolutely. But before we get going, which we're going to be accepting a lot of comments and questions for you, there's no doubt people are going to want to really look into this right now. I just want to share with you a little bit about something that I think everybody should know about you. You know, on this show, we have had a wide variety of animals. I mean, we've had a cow, we've had a pig, and now we have a deer. Tell us a little bit about Thor.
Oh my gosh. I could spend a whole show talking about Thor the deer.
Oh my gosh, so adorable.
Yeah, he was born on our property. We live outside of Portland, about 80 miles. We've got 5 acres here out in the country, and he was an abandoned little fawn, and we ended up he found us actually. We took him to the wildlife center, and they didn't have space for him. And so the wildlife center person told me, here's how you take care of the deer, and handed him to us. So it's been an adventure. My whole goal with him is to make him wild. I mean, it's pretty amazing. He's gone on 8 months now, and he's off on his own. I mean, he can find his own food. It's a little tough right now with winter, but he'll stop by and say hi. I'm still mom, but probably by spring he'll move off with the rest of the herd. But he's been interacting with all the deer now. So I feel like my time as a deer mom was drawing to a close.
He's adorable. How old is he?
He's going on 8 months now, but you can people can follow along with him. It's there's a Instagram Thor_the_deer, and he also has his own Facebook page too as well, forthedeer.com. So there's a kid's book coming out, and also a novel that I'm writing about this whole experience. It's just been phenomenal.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that, because I tell you what, I've been following you on Facebook, and it's just been like, you're just been this mother to Thor, and he's really taken a liking to you quite a bit. And people, I mean, tons and tons of people are following you because it's just a lovely story. It's just sweet and deer. And you know, we just don't want this deer to go away. We want him to hang around so we can hear more and more of your interactions with him.
It's hard. the right thing to do is to prepare him to enter the wild. He knows how to find his own food. He's interacting with other deer. He knows the difference that I'm not a deer and that he is a deer. So he's hanging out with them, and he stops by every day. So there's a little story I post every day because, this year's not been the best one in the world. So I call it your daily Thorapy update.
Yeah.
And so it's little stories about the life of Thor, and it's just kind of fun, it really is. But it's just a joy to watch him growing up and being self-sufficient. That's the best I can do, get him ready to be out there and do his own thing. And that's what he's doing. So.
Oh, well, you're a very good mother. And I know your buddy, David Kleiman, thinks so too. So David's like, oh, Thor, he knows the story, right?
Yeah, it's really sweet. And it's just, I think the best part is deer only groom their family members. So I'll be kind of petting him, and he'll give me a whole licking on my face and everything. It's just so sweet. It's just, it's so much love, and that's what I really needed. I think everybody kind of needed that this year. Just something kind and sweet and beautiful.
Yeah. Well, if Thorn comes through the office, let us know. We'll be happy to stop and put him here on the broadcast.
Okay.
His first live interview here on Hospitality Today Live. Well, I'm, again, just delighted to have you here. You're a longtime friend of mine, industry friend as well. And you have helped so many people. I just was so excited to have you on, especially now, because we know that the industry has had a really tough go. And, between 4 million of our peeps out of work, it's just been disheartening. But I want to talk about them, and we want to talk about those that are wanting to stick it out in this career, and those that have shifted to other careers as well. And I think you're the ticket to helping them get off the couch and kicking them in the butt, getting them rolling toward what they need to do. And a lot of people need some help. And where did they go first is their resume. So it's the hot topic. It's the ratio of business has changed. And that resume is really important for our hospitality peeps to get a new position, a new job. So let's talk about that.
Absolutely. I'm ready to roll. So
okay, good. So let's talk about some of the key things that people need to know. They definitely are looking at their resume right now. What kind of advice do you give them with these key things that they need to know about their resume today?
Well, there's a lot to know. First of all, the most important thing to know is that your resume, for the most part, is being scanned by software. It's called applicant tracking systems. So it's sort of the same mindset of search engine optimization. You kind of need to do the same thing on your resume. So that really requires everyone to have a pretty clear focal point on what types of jobs you're going for. I usually advise people to have a target job title headline at the top of the resume that will drive the development of the resume and also connect externally to the types of jobs you're going for. But keeping that in mind, you have a job title headline will also help you get the right density of keywords on your resume. You can't have a generic resume anymore. You really have to be pretty specialized. But the one thing is, a lot of people now are kind of pivoting or trying to tinker with their resume to kind of maybe go in a different direction until our industry recovers. So with that in mind, you really need to focus on transferable skill sets. So the job title headline should really be made up of two things. First of all is your title. And that's, are you an assistant, a coordinator, a manager, a director, a VP, EVP, or executive? So having clarity on where you are in your career, number one, that's also the pay part. And then secondly, you also need to have clarity on what your job function is. And that's really specifically the key transferable skill set. So I've been talking a lot to a lot of different industry groups. So if you really kind of think about what your job function is, and you're trying to maybe perhaps do, I hate to use the word pivot, but do a shift to a different area, you need to look at those key areas. So if you've been a meeting planner, you're easily a program manager, an operations manager or project manager. So take out some of the industry specific language and focus on the function of what you do. And that's how you can make that transition. And so if you have that job title headline at the top of the resume, then you want to frame up your background in those terms, and that will help you get the right density of keywords in there. So it's not gaming the system, it's giving it what it wants, basically. So that's a major part of the resume construction process nowadays.
So what I'm hearing here is it's not so much what's down on paper as much as positioning you on that paper, positioning you into your skill sets, or to kind of give yourself a little bit more of an open opportunity, because the position that you might be going for may not be available, but maybe they can think about you for other positions as well, and positioning yourself can help you with that.
Well, you really have to think, there's two sides of the coin. You don't want to be a chameleon changing your spots for every single job. So what you should do, instead of being a mile wide and an inch deep, you should be pretty vertical. So if you are having to do a pivot just due to the lack of job opportunities in this industry, if you're trying to make a shift, then you need to think along the lines, okay, if I'm a meeting planner or if I'm in sales, sales is sales is sales. So if you mute some of the industry specific jargon and language and focus on the function of what you've done, then you can create a conversation in your resume that really outlines the value that you brought. And that's the key thing about resumes nowadays, is that you can't just list job duties anymore. That doesn't answer any questions. If you kind of flip the script now and think about it from an employer standpoint, they're trying to find the best candidate that adds the most value. So they're basically trying to find the best qualified candidate at the lowest price. I mean, that's, it's a buyer's market right now. So your job, if you're trying to revise your resume, is to really focus on telling stories that add value and show how you're able to generate results. So it's basically looking at, not just job descriptions and tasks. You really have to think, well, so what? And that's what you need to start thinking about when you're writing underneath each job. Tell stories. I mean, you're a storyteller, Deborah. So it's, everybody needs to think of their resume as an opportunity to tell a story. And so when we start thinking about those specific tasks that you've done, try to change it into an actual story. Tell me about a time when, and what you want to use, and this is what resume writers like to use, is the CAR formula. It's called challenge, action, result. And when you start framing up each bullet, each story as a standalone business case that shows value, then you're actually really showing how you move the needle to your prospective audience. And that's where you actually will get the call for the interview, when you actually show how you move that needle. That's what employers want to see.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. Challenge, action, and results. Yeah, I really like that. Now, I would really like to know your perspective on this, because a lot of people talk about loyalty to a company. On a resume, is it important to showcase the loyalty you've had with other companies and organizations? I mean, I know when I used to work in the hotel industry, when people would say, oh, I've worked for Marriott for 30 years, or I've worked for Hyatt for 15 years. And I'm like, is that really a good thing? Because I'm thinking, yeah, loyalty may be wise, but position wise and growth wise, is that really important? And from your perspective, is that good to showcase on a resume?
It's a double-edged sword, but I will tell you that the conversations changed about loyalty. And I really emphasize that, because we're in a very nimble economy now. And, loyalty it's an interesting thing, because it's more important that you show you get results than loyalty. Okay. I hate to say that, but, if you stay too long at the same company, you can end up looking like you've been in a dead-end job. Right. However, if you've progressively moved up within the company, that means that you've added skill sets and continue to add value to the company. So I don't want you to feel bad if anybody who's watching has been at the same company for a long time. You need to think about all the different positions. If you can show progressive growth within your role, your time at the company, then that's good. But I think the conversations changed a lot. I think it started even back in 9/11, that so many people lost jobs when the economy ground to a halt. Then that there were some unexplained gaps on people's resumes, and I think the hiring managers started to learn that it wasn't someone's fault; it was a greater, effect. Economic factors were at play. Same thing happened in 2008, 2009 during the big recession that we had, that people got laid off. And so I like to talk about the fact that loyalty really is kind of a non-factor now, because really at the end of the day, you are employed as a result of a business agreement. You're agreeing to stay at a company as long as you get something of value from that company. You're feeling like you're compensated fairly, you enjoy the work, you feel rewarded and that kind of thing, you love what you do. Conversely, an employer only keeps you on as long as they feel like you're adding that value. So there really isn't anything such thing as job security and loyalty so much. And people found that out during the recession, that here they were trucking along doing a great job, they loved everybody, we were one big family, and then the economy tanked and people got let go and they felt like they had been cut out of their own family. And it's hard because so much, I think in particular this industry, we love what we do and we have such a personal identity in what we do.
Right.
So we felt as though we had our knees cut out from underneath each other ourselves. And the same thing's going on with COVID too. It's like, I believe in these people. I love these people. These are my family. How could they do this to me? But it's still the greater business driver it's hard. We get lured in the sense of comfort and safety and in those interpersonal relationships, which is a good thing. But at the end of the day, loyalty has changed a lot too, just because of the demographics of the younger workers that are entering the workforce. They have shorter attention spans, and that's not bad. They kind of have the mindset, okay, I've done this, I've learned and acquired this skill, I'm ready to do the next thing. And it's a different mindset. So it's shifted employers' expectations of how long someone's going to stay at a company. It used to be, 15 years, people were retired with a gold watch, right? Now it went from, then it was 10 years. You need to be in a job 10 years to seem like you're really a stable person. Now it was 8 years. Now it's 5 years. Now it's 2 years. I mean, we've kind of become a gig economy and a gig mindset. And so it's more important that, I guess my summary here is, it's more important that you show diversity, flexibility, nimbleness, knowledge acquisition, flexibility, than staying in one role. And again, don't feel bad if you've been in the same role. You just need to be able to show that you've moved up, you've acquired new skills, you've diversified, taken stretch assignments and that kind of thing. So it's a very interesting convergence of all these different factors that have really changed how loyalty has been perceived. To answer your question, it's changed a lot.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like it. And you brought up a very good point. Another factor could be generation wise. Are you finding that on your resume, in order for somebody to get hired, there's generational factors involved as well? Hiring somebody that's been in the industry a long time as opposed to somebody new that may not, have the experience as an older generation. Tell us your perspective and your experience while working with these people, that you've been working on resume wise. What's the ratio of them getting hired compared to other generations?
Well, anytime we start talking about age, that really does run into the wall of age discrimination. It's at both ends of the spectrum here. And when it could be anything for more mature workers. You really need to limit how much history you list on your resume. I mean, basically the goal is to really try to make sure that your resume and your LinkedIn profile, for that matter, are all age neutral. So things like your email address should not include what year you were born, what year you graduated, or any of those things. So or your age or anything like that. So you need to make sure your email address is a professional one that doesn't tip your hand about how old you are. You don't want to list what year you graduated. You don't want to list more work experience than maybe 10 to 15 years of experience. And essentially what you're trying to do is curate your resume. You don't have to list every single job you've ever had on your resume. You can be a little bit more selective about that also on your LinkedIn to curate it within that 10 to 15 year range. Employers don't care what you did 30 years ago because it's quite frankly not reflective of what you're capable of doing in this current moment. That's what they want to see, is what are you doing right now as a current gauge of what you might be able to do for them. So really being mindful about keeping that age curation within that tight 10 to 15 year range. And, it goes both ends. There's, people that are discriminated about how old they are, on the older end. And then there's also age discrimination against people that are younger, because employers also make wrong assumptions about younger people, that you're going to be checking Facebook and all this stuff and messing around in social media and not doing your job. So, and that's wrong, obviously. So shaping how you present yourself and focusing on the value that you bring is going to be most important. So then the rest of it can just kind of come through natural conversation and that kind of thing. So it's obvious, if you're having an interview, that someone can tell if you have gray hair, okay, well, you're a little bit more mature. But you have to break through with your resume and LinkedIn to get to that conversation point. Then you can sell yourself. But kind of conversely, you also need to be going in through the side door and getting someone at that target company who can be kind of your advocate. And if you have someone who can have speaking points about you to the hiring manager, decision makers, and that weights your application. So that way you have a better chance of beating out other people. So it's kind of figuring out what your advantage is and working with your advocate to help communicate that.
Right. Good point. Very good point. Well, and you brought up earlier about LinkedIn and the profile there. I know you're an excellent expert on LinkedIn profiles and have helped hundreds and hundreds of people, if not thousands, on that profile status. And we have even a question from Lisa with Visibility Media about LinkedIn. Do researchers prefer an actual resume, or can job seekers import that LinkedIn profile as a resume? Good question.
That's a good question. And so it yes and yes. So there's different ways that people can find you. I mean, the resume is something that you would submit proactively for a role. You can have your resume on LinkedIn, but they're really kind of two different mediums, basically. I mean, the resume is more the factual background, and it's presented in more formal business language.
Okay.
When we start talking about LinkedIn, that is social media. So the conversation needs to change. And the thing is that you really need to think of your LinkedIn profile as a way to communicate a little bit more about your culture fit and your chemistry. So when we start talking about the LinkedIn profile, you really need to change the voice. LinkedIn is different because you're using personal pronouns like me, my, and I. You're speaking directly to the audience. So there's an opportunity there to add a little bit more of your personality injected into the profile. And people can find you on LinkedIn and then ask for your resume, or they will get your resume and then go look at your LinkedIn. You don't want them to be exactly the same. And so that's the resume is much more formal business language, and it's just relegated to the facts. And then, you do want to include your branding statement, and whatnot in your resume. But when we start looking at the LinkedIn profile, that's where you can infuse it with some stories. There's that summary section at the top of the LinkedIn profile. It's a powerful tool to connect to your audience. So I always urge people to, take advantage of this and think about, tell a story. What fired you up about this industry? Or if you're trying to transition, own it. Just say, I've been in the meetings industry, and when, it collapsed due to COVID-19, then I realized that what I really do is operations. I have my fingers in all these different areas. So tell the story there. And so it's a way to help tell a little bit more than what you can say on your resume. It's funny because I've had this discussion with several recruiters. It's like, you can't, can you really be honest on your resume? I mean, we always want to be honest on our resume and our LinkedIn, but we never really get to say what really happened. Like if there was a boss who had a personal agenda, or, you know, there was a problem within the company, you can't be that honest, right? So you have to balance it. But with LinkedIn, you definitely want to include your wins that we talked about earlier that you would develop for your resume, that would talk about, okay, you know, your challenge, action, result pieces, because there are opportunities to apply for jobs on LinkedIn using your profile. And so you definitely want to include that in there. But at the same time, you really want to tell that compelling story. So even when we start looking at the actual jobs you've held on LinkedIn, you change the narrative up and talk about things that you really enjoyed. You know, say, this is one thing I really I found that I enjoyed in this role, or maybe I learned about this, or what was my biggest takeaway in this role. And then you do want to include those challenge, action, results in there. But it's much more compelling than the resume. So they're complementary, but they are definitely separate.
Well, thank you for explaining that, because I always thought it was pretty much supposed to be like the same, but it sounds like, yeah, there definitely needs to be some differences. And I know before the show, I said to you that, hey, you know, if you want to, you can utilize me as a guinea pig to look at my profile, because obviously I don't know what I'm doing with my profile, and I'm willing to do this on the air. If you've got the good, the bad, and the ugly of my profile, let's hear it.
Okay, well, I've got your profile open, and you know, one thing that I really love what you've done with your profile, Deborah, is that you have two things immediately. You know, LinkedIn switched over to kind of the bigger image WordPress format with their images, as far as your cover photo and then your picture. So I love it. You've got yourself speaking to a group. It's pretty clear what you do. And then you have a nice photo that's your profile picture versus your cover photo. And then you're smiling and looking at the camera. This is perfect. It looks inviting, opening. It's pretty clear what you do. And so for anyone who's thinking about retooling their LinkedIn profile, having an image in the background is going to be really important. That kind of conveys what you do. So if you're in sales, maybe you want to have two people handshaking, although maybe not so much in this age of COVID, but you get my point. Or if you're meeting planning, you're still staying in the industry, maybe you have a picture of a show floor with people doing stuff, or a conference where people are listening to a speaker. So it's really important to take advantage of all these tools that LinkedIn's offering. So you're doing a great job there. And then you definitely want to include, you have competitive performance expert, host, Hospitality Today live show, Mrs. Arizona 2021. Congratulations, by the way. So a lot of
titles going on there.
What's that?
A lot of titles are going on there.
Yeah. And so I realize you're trying to appeal to a wide array of people, but it's really important to use that little piece right underneath your name. That's your little summary piece, headline. You really need to transform that into like a powerful branding statement that ties in directly to what you want to do. So it's that branding statement would be something you'd also include on your resume as well, instead of an objective statement, just by the way. So it's really important to think about, well, who are you trying to reach with this profile, and what value are you trying to convey to them? So having a branding statement would be maybe perhaps a small improvement you can make there, just to really connect with people. And then there's the about section, and you mentioned a lot of your accomplishments there, but I think it might be a good idea to talk about what is it that you've created this whole Hospitality Today piece here. Why not talk about why you launched this forum, and that you saw a need and you felt like it was important to have a great conversation, a town square, basically, for the industry, and help people. So there's a story there. So talk about how maybe your career path, what's inspired you, and how have you landed to where you are now, and how can you help people? And it's really also important at the end, in kind of a sales perspective, is like close the sale, create a call to action. What do you want people to do with your profile to reach out to you, and include that contact information in there? And then You've done a good job. You've got some featured pieces here. You've got a post there of your live in 2013. You might want to include some more links. I know you've got a ton of content, including all these shows. You can start adding a ton of clicks for, if you've been in any articles, written articles, featured, speaking gigs, anything. You got to think about the featured section as like your grand central station that you can post all these content links that are external to LinkedIn, but somebody can find them all right now here on your off your profile. So if they want to learn more, I mean, I've done that with my profile. I've been featured in a lot of publications, so I've added all those links to my profile. So at least it adds more to your credibility, but it also provides diversity of content streams to your profile, if that makes sense.
Okay. So what about people that always want to put like a quote in there, quoting somebody else or quoting their own quote? I've seen that a couple of times as well. Is that?
What do you mean by that? So help me out.
Well, people will put a little quote that they're quoting somebody. It could be an inspirational quote.
Yeah, you could do that, but you have to tell the story about it. Like, why does that mean something to you? Why are you bringing that forward? And how does that tie into what you're doing, or what you think your audience might want to know about you?
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, gosh, you were pretty easy on me there. I appreciate that. That's good to know that I'm at least on the right track.
You are.
Coming from an expert. But I will definitely make those changes and updates for sure. But like you said, I like the point what you said earlier too, is don't go back so far into your history, because we all change, we all grow, and with new experience and expertise coming about. Why rely so much on the past? How far back should we not go then?
Well, I mean, my own profile for LinkedIn, I actually include all my experience all the way back to 1993. It's like, oh yeah, I'm getting up there. But I felt as though I wanted to include it because that's back when I worked at the Travel Portlands. And so for people that I work with in this industry, it's good to know that I have a DMO background. And so I was there quite a while. And so I don't mind, because I'm a private business owner, but that goes back to 1993. That obviously puts me in a certain age bracket to work that long, right? So that's my choice, because I'm not looking for a job. I'm not worried about age discrimination. But for those of you who are looking for work, then that is something to be mindful of. And kind of going back to what I said earlier, is that you need to be able to show what you've done most recently, because it's a best predictor of what you're capable of doing for a potential employer in the current moment now. So if you're talking, for example, I have one client that was executive at a high tech firm, and he insisted on including his sales numbers from 1984 on his resume and his LinkedIn. I said, that's not, no. And he, no, I really want it on there. No. And I said, okay, so what is it about that time you really want to get across? And he's an executive. And he said, well, that was actually at a company. It's now a multi-million-dollar multinational company. And that was like my boot camp for being an executive. I said, that's the nugget. We can summarize that piece, but it lets the reader know a little bit more about, okay, why is this important? But your sales numbers, they're not as relevant. You have to get to the point. So you can summarize background that's older than that 10 to 15 year threshold. You don't have to go into great detail. You don't have to include dates. You can just say additional background, previous employment as job title at company, period. And if you have some kind of big nugget to get across in there, that's great, but you don't have to go into great detail as far as challenge, action, result, and that kind of thing. It just gets what you need to get across. But by all means, be careful. Again, you don't want to have too many of those underneath there that are going back. It's like, okay, people can do the math and figure out, okay, that's quite a while back. So you need to be careful about that.
Okay, good point. Very good point. Because I totally sympathize with him, because as a salesperson, those numbers were great back then compared to today, and you want to hang on to them. So I get where he's coming from, but overall, it doesn't serve you at all. Well, I tell you what, the challenges are out there right now. The biggest challenge is that there's so much competition, especially when things start turning around. people need to update their resumes and their LinkedIn profile now to get started, because there are companies that are hiring, just depending if you want to stay in the industry or if you want to do a career shift. And you and I both have seen our hospitality peeps doing other things now. Do you feel that that is temporary? Because, you know, our industry is so gravitating. We love our industry. It's so hard to dab into other industries once you're in this industry. Do you see this as a temporary thing for them to do, or do you think they'll come back? What's your thought process on that, Dawn?
I think here's my little kernel of hope here. So I believe our industry is going to come back. Absolutely. And, you know, hope is on the horizon. It sounds like the vaccines are getting rolled out. It's going to take a little time for the whole population to get fully immunized. But, you know, help is on the way, but it is still going to take some time as we work out all the hiccups. And, you know, we may be playing a little bit of whack-a-mole with the coronavirus with different, you know, spikes in different places. And, you know, there's some questions about the efficacy, like how long does it actually last? Are we going to have to get a shot every year, sort of like the flu and that kind of thing? But, you know, and this is the biggest question for our industry, because we love what we do. I mean, this is part of our DNA. It's what we do. It's everything we've, you know, our friends are in this industry. I can tell you, you know, just like you're a lifetime friend. So this is a lot different than from a lot of other industries. We are really self-identifying as this is part of who we are and identity. So it's hard, and it's feeling like we've been stripped of everything, you know, our income, our identity, everything. So it is okay to give yourself permission. If you change, here's my kernel of hope here. So if you change your mentality and think about this whole time as a stretch assignment, instead of feeling defeated, you can come back in this industry. It will come back. You can come back. But instead of feeling defeated, try to focus on accepting a new role that would be a stretch assignment. So you learn new skills. Maybe you'll learn about a new industry. Maybe you're gaining new contacts, all these different new knowledge. So think of it as a stretch assignment, number one. Number two, I'd like to direct people to the Young Presidents Organization, YPO. They have, I don't have the link in front of me right now, but you can go to their website, and they did a survey of all the executives, I think 1,600 of them. And they pointed out where they see industry contraction and industry growth. Now, this is kind of crude, but you need to follow the money. In this time, we are in survival mode. You need to be able to understand and think ahead, just like these executives are. Where are companies and people, investors putting money into? Where's the growth occurring right now? And so if you can follow that money and look at that survey and see what the executives are identifying as growth areas, it requires a little bit more diligence and research. But if you can find out where the growth is occurring and understand how you might take a stretch assignment and, you know, really look at those transferable skill sets, you can pop into another field for the time being. And when our industry recovers, you can come back and you'll be a lot more qualified than some of the other people. That will help differentiate you from competitors. So that really can be a mindful way of moving forward and thinking about, well, how can I go into another field, gain some new skill sets, and think of it as a learning opportunity. I mean, everybody in this industry is super type A personality. I know I'm one of them, but you know, it's we want to move, we want to go, we want to get it done, and that's great. But it's a little bit of a humble pie helping. If you change your mindset to say, okay, I'm in learning mode, I don't know it all, I'm going to learn some new things. And then that will transform my attitude and my perspective so I can go learn something new and then bring that back with me. And that may open even more doors once our industry recovers. So that's the beauty of it.
Right. Okay. That's a good thing to know, because a lot of them are out there getting other experience. And by the time everything turns around and they want to come back, they're going to be refreshed with all this new information from other industries to bring into ours as well. I think that's a great idea to be open to stretch your assignments. So that's pretty much what they're doing. Any other ideas that you recommend?
Well, networking is, again, the heart of it all. We keep hearing it. You need to have a network. You need to be networking. You need to build your network. I know it's not the same as it has been in the past where we can just meet somebody at a meeting and bump into them. Obviously, it's a little bit more structured with our online virtual environments that we're in. But you need to be thinking about networking. That really means you have to take care of your career. You can't just let go and assume that things are going to just kind of continue on. You get so busy in your job that you're not really paying attention to the steering wheel, and you need to take control of the steering wheel. But that ultimately is driven by who do you connect with and who do you know, and building those relationships. LinkedIn, it's easy to add a connection on LinkedIn, but how much of a conversation are you actually starting with that individual? It's really important that you link to someone and reach out and ask them, or at least make some kind of connection with them beyond the formal standard default greeting. If you're only doing that, that's bad. And why? Because networking is all about starting a conversation. How are you starting a conversation if you're sending the standard default network greeting on LinkedIn to connect to someone? So find a commonality, find a common interest, find a common industry, organization, find a reason to reach out to someone and start the conversation. Networking is all about maintaining that conversation and growing a connection, growing a relationship. So if you're only a one-hit wonder, you're just adding notches on your belt, that's not going anywhere. You're not going to be adding any kind of benefit or value to that interaction. It's just, I connect with everybody. I'm an open networker, but I remember the people who connect with me directly and create a conversation about it. The one-hit people, I don't know. I should probably go through my network and clean them out. But it's about taking care of your career, networking, and really focusing on keeping track of your accomplishments. That's another thing that people fail to do, is that they can't even remember what they did 5 minutes ago, right? Let alone 5 years ago. So when we're going back to update our resume or our LinkedIn profile, it's like, oh man, I don't know what I did in that job. I can't remember. And so creating a file, either virtual or digital, or a hard file of some of the things that you've done is going to be really important. You should include like your performance reviews, your evaluations, any post-event recaps, any reports, any plan of work, any performance reviews, all those things that you do every day. You've got to take control of it and say, I'm in the middle of this. So, we know about strategic meetings management, all those little metrics and performance about how did you perform to goal. You need to own this, and that's part of your career. And you got to communicate that too. Right. So, right now, if you're in a situation where you're employed and you're starting to feel a little nervous about your job, remember this: employers retain profit centers. They get rid of cost centers. So you need to be that squeaky wheel and communicate with the boss. How much value have you brought in? How much money have you brought in? How much money have you saved? You've got to think about that from a business standpoint. The more you understand what keeps the boss up at night and try to show how you're solving those pain points, the better chance you have of being retained. Or if your job is eliminated, maybe perhaps you'd be reassigned in a different role within the same company, so you're still employed. So some valuable things there to think about.
Oh, very good. Very good points. As a matter of fact, the big one is, be an investment, not an expense.
Yes,
to your employers. And I think that is key to, like you said, finding out what's keeping them up late at night. And pertaining to your point about networking, I always irk, and I know a lot of people do, when you get a LinkedIn message from somebody that all they want to do is sell you right off the bat. They're not building and realizing it takes 10 to 12 touches before you really get somebody's attention. And it just irks me when somebody just bangs it. I mean, right away, delete.
Yep. Block.
Delete. Immediately. Well, and I loved your last point that you brought up as well. Plan ahead, yet be adaptable. Can you explain that?
Yeah, it has a lot to do with not being afraid of change. And being adaptable means that you can be flexible and you are open to change. It's so scary when change happens and we end up fearing it. But I've always used the description of fear is something that grows bigger and bigger in your rearview mirror. Okay. So the farther you run away from it, the bigger it gets in your rearview mirror. And if you actually turn and face it, then it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So it is scary. And so you can't plan for everything, but being mindful and open-minded and reading up and understanding and staying on top of trends and learning something new, those are all things that you can do to be more adaptable. And think about implications. They're like, well, if I do this, maybe it has applicability to something else. So it requires you to be a little bit more entrepreneurial about yourself. What can I do with what I have? And think about different contexts, and do as much as you can to plan ahead. For some of you, you're thinking ahead like, well, I want to move up into a director role. So be adaptable, but you can keep in mind, if you're trying to move up in as far as like the hierarchy in the organization, you're ready to take that next role. So plan ahead, start taking management classes. What can you do to build your management IQ? Maybe it's a stretch assignment internally. Maybe you are shouldering a very difficult project. You ask for it, you volunteer, you take one for the team. Show that you're sharing knowledge internally, so you're helping benefit everyone. So it's taking all these little pieces and adding them up to a plan where you're actually moving yourself up. And if you're in a situation where the boss isn't very receptive, maybe you need to learn about how to manage up. That's actually a whole discipline now, because a lot of times people will get promoted into leadership roles and maybe they're not really good at managing people, but they're good at the vision part. I'm sure I'm ringing a bell with a lot of people. But learning how to manage up to really, you're not controlling someone, but you're trying to get what you need out of them in a way that it'll be more digestible by them, versus you trying to say, this is what you need to be doing. It's a very delicate dance, but it is possible. And if you learn how to do it mindfully, you can get what you want in that perspective. It's a really interesting concept, but being adaptable is not being so set in your ways as well that this is the way we've always done it. It's like, well, no, wow, this is great. I'm open to learning that. I mean, I've heard, and I love this concept, that people who have been in the workforce for a long time, they find a younger mentor. And I love that concept, because what that does is that it's having someone to teach you to change your mindset. So,
Sure.
You don't let your experience completely prejudice you, that, this is the way we've always done it, or there's wisdom and in experience. Absolutely. But it can also make you so set because of that you're not willing to consider other viewpoints. So having a younger mentor could actually help you, and younger people can look for more mature workers who can give them a little bit more insights to what experience has taught them. So it's actually a really great opportunity to help both folks, and so I love that.
I have to agree with you on that. I was just with my niece yesterday, and I learned so much from her, how not to sing, one of them, but that's very true. We can really learn, and just put the age aside, or even the experience sometimes aside. You can always learn from other people's way of learning as well. So I totally understand that. And David Kleiman, he actually agrees with you on that for sure, because the younger, generation, they do rock. They are coming from a whole different perspective. So David, you're absolutely right on that. And so we just need to be open-minded, but overthink. What you were talking about is, be open to stretch assignments, be adaptable, and definitely take care of your career. I love those three areas, because all three apply to everything that we do right now. I do have another question here, and it comes from Lisa. She wants to know, should job seekers follow job recruiters' profiles or stick to just company pages? What do you think about that?
I think I love using this example. It's my AAA example. Okay. How's that apply? Let me tell you, a long time ago, when I was a very young pup, I applied for a job at AAA Oregon, Idaho. And I was zooming through the interview, just doing an awesome job. And at the end of the interview, they said, okay, can you show us your AAA card? Didn't have one.
Oh, no.
So, I mean, so this is important. And thanks, Lisa, for this. Is a good question because you really have to show affinity for the company, but you don't want to be a stalker, but Twitter is awesome. I know we're talking about LinkedIn, but Twitter is like so easy to connect with people, and the recruiters are exceptionally available on LinkedIn. They are just right on top of that. If you think about it, you're the commodity. That's what they're desperately seeking, and they're doing everything they can to try to find someone who fill this job order. But this is really important. You need to treat the recruiter as the decision maker because they are. You can't subvert them and go directly to the company. You have to go through their channel and treat them with the respect because that's what they do, and they're going to present you with their endorsement as the best candidate once you go through that whole process. So you really need to think about them as the actual gatekeeper, and they are awesome. But usually they will get right back to you, especially on Twitter. But following them, following the company on social media, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. Employers like to hire brand ambassadors, and the more you're into the brand and engaging with them, and there's LinkedIn groups, there's people you can follow, you can friend or connect with them on LinkedIn and Facebook, whatever. And the more you're engaging with that brand and all the social media channels, they check that stuff, and so it's a great way to show that you're already engaged in part of their kind of ambassador family, so to speak. That's always good too.
Yeah, and I also understand that when you go onto the company web pages, the best way to be relevant, to find out what's really going on in the company, is go to their press release or their media page, right?
Yeah,
to see what they're posting recently, the awards that they've won, or maybe they opened up a new office down the street from where you live. I mean, there's a lot of information you can get just from that one page.
You can go to the press room. Sometimes if they're a publicly traded company, they will also have an annual report that you can parse through. And just even going to Google, everybody kind of goes to Google and then they just type in, you go to Google, type in the company name, and then the company pops up, and that's the first results. Well, you need to scroll over at the top to news, and you need to read about the company, what's going on with the company. What they say on their website's one thing, but what does the news say about them? That's part of your due diligence and research. They could say that their stock value's down, or they lost their executive or something like that, or there's a lot of change or whatever. So you should be doing your own due diligence. That's really important there too. So
yeah. Wow, that's a wealth of information that I can't even imagine anybody not wanting to consume, because this is, again, the time to put your resume, your LinkedIn, and now I'm saying Twitter is a good place to hang out.
Yeah. One thing I did want to add too, and I'm speaking to the women in the audience. So this is very important because I'm all about women and people of color. You have to be your own advocate. And it's especially for women, they are definitely second guessing themselves all the time. And I will tell you, I've worked with lots of executive women, and they're thinking, well, I'm not sure if I'm qualified for this job. Okay, so if you're having that conversation with yourself, I mean, you obviously want to make sure that you do meet the qualifications. But if you're not sure and you're starting to have that self-doubt, and you know what I'm talking about, you need to ask yourself this one question. Would a man be thinking this?
Right.
And ask yourself that again, would a man be thinking this? And the answer would be probably no. And so you have to think about how are you, second guessing yourself. You win nothing that you don't try. But if you do try, then there's always a possibility that you will win it. So you can't second guess yourself. And so women will sit there and say, oh, well, I need to take another class in this and blah, blah, blah. I mean, we want to feel more than 100% qualified. And that's admirable, but it can be a hindrance because people talk themselves out of applying for a job just because of that. So it's really important that you own your background and feel confident that you have arrived, that you're there and you're ready. And, you can go through the job description line by line by line and ask yourself, do I have an example of something I've done? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Okay, you're set. You need to go for it. So
yeah, confidence is definitely a key to walking in before a resume, before an interview, or talking to somebody, a very important position that you want. So it's self-talk, letting know that you can walk in there and do any type of job, man or woman, is going to be important. But that's very, very true. I find a lot of women that walk into those type of positions and just blow it because they just don't have the confidence in themselves. So thank you for bringing that to their attention, for sure. Well, as we wrap up, and I hate to do that because I tell you what, we can talk about this all day long. I kind of want to reflect on the year because it has been a very difficult year. Can you tell us, at least these past couple months, what maybe you have learned? Is there one thing that you've learned that, other than becoming the mama to Thor and busy in that arena, but personally or professionally, anything that you learned that gosh, just probably wouldn't have happened if this pandemic didn't even exist?
Well, that's a really good question. And on a personal level and professional, I think the thing that I've learned the most is that I've humbled myself. I realize what I do is so directly tied into people's worth and what they earn and their life and their lifestyle and their ability to provide for the family. I mean, your career is what determines how you live and how much you make. And I know that this is a very precious thing, and people don't spend that much time on it. They think a lot about career options, but they're not really focused on their career drivers. And for me, I know that I'm in a gateway of knowledge about how to do that. And I know that our industry's been hurting. And so I've done a lot of presentations with a lot of MPI chapters and also IAAE and PCMA and all the other ones. And I frequently, I have donated my services this year. I realized early on that this industry has been integral to my business's growth. And I felt like, okay, I'm in a place of abundance, and recognizing that urgency of trying to help people during this very difficult time and give them hope, give them the tools, give them knowledge that I can like spread that information and help people at the moment that they need it the most. And so it's overwhelming, and I've been really trying to do as much as I can. It's like I can't solve everybody's problems. I think this is the balance. It's trying to give as much as I can to help as many people as possible, because this is the time they need it. But I felt like this was a time to give back to the industry that has supported me and helped my business grow. I'm in a place where what I need is in high demand. What I offer is in high demand. And so I have the ability and the bandwidth and the abundance to give back. And so this has been a very powerful exercise for me, just because I care so much about our industry. I started traveling when I was a kid. My family always took a big vacation. That's kind of what made me think, well, this is a whole career. I kind of stumbled on it, and it's been something I love traveling. And I know that the people that are in this industry, we care so much about what we do. It's really important to try to give back. So it's been an exercise for me in a positive way, that it's helped me become a better person and hopefully help people along the way. So
well, and you've always been a great person, and I can see where this definitely has been a different year for you as well, and in a very different way. And it's gonna definitely pay off for you in the long run too. At the same time, our industry, and again, you've always been a great person. I remember coming out to your neck of the woods for the Masters National Swimming Meet, and you were right there cheering me on. So
yeah.
Friends forever, above and beyond this industry. That's the beauty of what we do. So I want to thank you so much for what you have shared with us today. As a matter of fact, I know people are going to want to stay in touch with you. Can you share how they can do that to expand on this conversation?
Sure, absolutely. I can be reached at pathfindercareers.com. So Pathfinder is singular. People get that messed up. So it's Pathfinder singular careers.com. .com. And I think my phone number, it's pretty visible. So it's all over the place. So yeah.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, we want to definitely, I'm sure, open up the invitation for anybody that would like to stay in touch with you and learn more and know where they can actually learn, especially more about their own personal resumes and LinkedIn profile. I so appreciate you taking the time to look at mine. I'll get right on that because it's definitely a need. When things start turning around, it's going to be gangbusters. It really is. And thank goodness you're there to help everybody at this time. So it's so appreciative. So thank you again very much for joining us. Gosh, I know I'll be staying in touch with you as well. And Happy New Year to you and Thor.
Thank you. I just heard him outside. I think he was up on the deck behind me in the window, but he took off. I heard him go, there's a big crash outside.
Would love to see that little guy. So I'll be in touch with you and watching his story on Facebook in particular. So anybody that wants to as well, remember he's got a Facebook page too.
Yeah. Thor the deer.
Well, thank you again. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Deborah. Take care. Happy New Year.
Take care. Bye-bye. Well, thank you everyone for joining today's show. I know I totally appreciated what all those golden nuggets that Dawn had shared with us, and I'm sure you have as well. And gosh, just remember how important it is for you to position yourself with your resume, LinkedIn profile, and other avenues as well. And if anyone can do it for you, Dawn can. So make sure you get an opportunity to connect with her. And if you want to see this conversation again or share this episode with others in need, by all means, take a look at our Facebook page or YouTube channel, and soon LinkedIn as well for any upcoming shows and resources as well. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. Since we're fairly new to it, we would love to have more subscribers. And any questions or comments, please contact my show manager, Lisa Raymond, or myself at hello@hospitalitytoday.com. And we want to also thank Yard Art Greetings for sponsoring today's show, along with other shows this past year as well. They have been terrific. So now, next up, we're going to start the new year out with a very interesting topic by Randy Clark, who is a licensed healthcare broker with Efficient Healthcare Solutions. Now, Randy comes from the hospitality industry, especially the hotel segment, but now he's actually helping the hospitality industry with their insurance needs, including mine. And I cannot wait to have him on the show to share what this insurance is all about. What are the best insurance policies that you should be, whether it's utilizing it as a self-employed person in the hospitality industry or with a company. And along with, he'll tell you what the importance behind it as well, and he'll provide solutions. And maybe you will receive a free quote as well. So we don't want you to miss next Tuesday, same time, right here on Hospitality Today Live. Well, I'm Deborah Gardner. Thank you so much for joining us. And from the HTL family to yours, Happy New Year's, everybody.